to the AI Campus Show's second season of Pokemon Universe.
Please subscribe and give like. Enjoy.
Welcome to the debate. Imagine holding a super weapon that guarantees absolute victory.
Okay, I'm listening.
But to actually fire it, you have to stand completely paralyzed for a full minute while your opponent just takes aim at you.
That sounds terrible.
Right? Do you take that risk? Today, we are looking at the 2014 launch of the Pokémon X Y Era, which honestly presented players with exactly that kind of terrifying dilemma.
It really did. You know, when you look back at the history of the franchise, the introduction of the Kalos region feels less like a simple scheduled update and more like a sudden, jarring, dimensional shift.
Oh, completely. In the video games, we literally moved from a flat, two-dimensional sprite-based world into a fully rendered 3D universe.
Yeah, and if you look closely at the trading card game during that exact same period, you see an identical paradigm shift. The game suddenly expanded its dimensions, both physically and mechanically.
Exactly. With over, 140 new cards in that base set alone? It brought this vibrant, explosive new visual style and really popularized full art cards.
Right. It was this massive, load-bearing bridge between the classic, slower-paced Pokémon TCG and the hyper-modern, super-aggressive game we recognize today.
But beneath that whole visual revolution, there is this profound mechanical tension. So we're asking a specific question today. What mechanic truly defined the strategic legacy of the X and Y TCG era?
Was it the turn-ending, high-stakes gamble of Mega Evolution?
Or was it the pervasive, scaling dominance of standard Pokémon EX cards? I am arguing that Mega Evolution fundamentally redefined the game's strategic risk assessment. It basically forced players to sacrifice momentum for raw power.
And I am taking the stance that while Mega Evolutions were incredibly flashy, like they looked great on a poster, standard Pokémon EX cards were the true engines of the competitive scene.
I completely disagree, but go on.
Well, with their two-prize card penalty and their incredibly efficient scaling attacks, standard EX cards proved far more dominant on the table. They fundamentally shaped the math of the era much more than the clunky stop-and-go mechanic of Mega Evolution.
But isn't relying on standard EX cards, frankly, just playing it safe?
Playing it safe?
Yeah, I mean, you were just optimizing the math we already understood from the previous generation. Mega Evolution, on the other hand, forced a completely new way of thinking about turn economy.
I wouldn't call it playing it safe to build a consistent strategy, but sure, let's unpack the Mega mechanic.
Let's do it. Mega Pokémon EX introduces unprecedented ceiling of power to the game. We are talking about massive HP totals and devastating board-wiping attacks that simply did not exist prior to this set.
Right? The numbers were huge.
But the brilliance of the mechanic is the cost. When you Mega Evolve the Pokémon, your turn immediately ends. You do not get to attack.
You literally just pass.
You do not get to play another card. It is a hard, full stop. And, in a card game that is entirely built around momentum, drawing through your deck, playing items, dealing chip damage, choosing to willingly halt your own momentum is a fascinating strategic trap.
It is a trap, I'll give you that.
It forced players into this constant, agonizingly tense calculation. Do I trade my immediate board pressure today for overwhelming dominance tomorrow? That specific friction of giving up your turn, I think that is the defining innovation of the Kalos era.
See, I come at it from a completely different way, because we need to separate theoretical puzzle design from actual tournament reality.
Okay, fair.
I completely agree that the idea of sacrificing a turn is a neat concept in a vacuum, but actual tournament play, the environment where the game is actually tested and broken down, it told a completely different story.
I mean, they still saw play.
Barely, at first. If you're listening to this and thinking, why would anyone ever willingly give up their turn in a fast-paced game? Well, the competitive community asked the exact same question. The defining tension of the X and Y era wasn't about losing a turn.
What was it then?
It was the constant razor-edge balance between power and vulnerability that was inherent to standard EX cards. You have to remember the core rule of the game here. You start with 6 prize cards.
Right, knock out a normal Pokémon, you take 1 prize.
Exactly. But when an EX is knocked out, your opponent takes 2 prize cards. In an EX-heavy format, the game can end in just 3 knockouts. It becomes this brutal sprint.
It was definitely fast.
Insanely fast. Cards like Mewtwo EX, Shaman EX, and especially Yveltal EX offered incredible HP and strength without that momentum-killing penalty you were praising so much. Standard EX cards dictated the pace, the deck building, and the prize mapping of the entire generation.
Okay, you bring up prize mapping, which, for the audience, is the calculation of exactly how and when you can take your 6 prizes versus how quickly your opponent can take theirs.
Yep.
But doesn't the sheer existence of Mega Evolution completely short-circuit that traditional math? Think about that super weapon analogy from earlier.
Oh boy, here we go.
No, seriously. The fear of a Mega Evolution sitting on your opponent's bench, knowing that next turn, if they get it off, it might completely wipe out your active EX card in 1 hit. Doesn't that terror control the board state just as much as an active EX Frid?
I don't know if terror is the right word.
I think it is. The psychological pressure of a Mega Evolution changes the opponent's behavior fundamentally. The safe zones on the board suddenly vanish.
If you say so.
They do. They have to rush, they have to misplay, or they have to prematurely expend vital resources just to prevent that super weapon from firing. I would argue that the turn-ending penalty elevated the intellectual rigor of the game. It wasn't just about who could swing the hardest, fastest.
The problem with that framing, though, is that it assumes your opponent is just going to sit there, paralyzed by fear, and let you charge the weapon.
Well, they have to respond.
Right. But in a highly competitive environment, we are talking regional championships, world championships. Reliability always trumps theoretical power. The X and Y era was incredibly fast and aggressive.
Which is why dropping a Mega is such a flex.
No. If you pass your turn to Mega Evolve, a skilled opponent isn't feeling psychological pressure. They are feeling absolute relief.
Relief? Really?
Yes. You have just handed them the most valuable resource in the game, which is time. They are taking that free turn to use a supporter card, which you're strictly limited to doing once per turn, making every single one mathematically precious.
Sure, but
They are attaching their 1 energy for the turn, they are bringing up a powerful EX and potentially knocking out your Mega before it even gets the chance to attack. The 2 prize card risk of standard EX cards was the more relevant competitive math, because it was happening every single turn on every single board. You just never give your opponent a free breath.
Okay, I see your point regarding the punishing speed of the format. Giving up a turn is a massive concession, yes.
A fatal one, usually.
I think you are dismissing the sheer structural impact of that power ceiling. Let's look at how this actually played out on the table.
Let's do it.
Because the discussion of reliability versus raw power naturally funnels into examining the specific cards that represented these opposing philosophies. I know you view standard EX cards as the defining engines, but let me give you a different perspective.
I'm waiting.
I want to bring up the literal face of the era, Mega Charizard EX, specifically the black and blue Mega Charizard X.
Oh, of course we are talking about Charizard.
We have to. This card was the ultimate symbol of the X and Y generation. Its presence was overwhelming. When that card hit the table, it demanded a response. Competitive players actively feared it.
Because it was a beat stick.
Because its damage output was so astronomically high, it could effortlessly one-shot any standard EX card you put in front of it. It didn't matter how perfectly reliable your EX was or how well you had mapped out your prizes if your primary attacker was instantly deleted from the board in a single attack.
That's a big if.
That devastating potential, the ability to completely bypass the opponent's careful math, that is what commanded the format.
Okay, Mega Charizard was a nuke. Absolutely. But it was a nuke that took an immense amount of setup, required you to skip a turn, and demanded a very specific, clunky energy cost to even fire.
It was worth it, though.
Was it? If we are going to talk about the cards that truly define the competitive landscape, the ones that reshaped how players approach the game on a molecular level, Yveltal EX is the gold standard.
Yveltal was strong, yes.
It was arguably one of the strongest competitive cards of the entire era. Not because it had the highest damage ceiling, but because of a deeply elegant, devastatingly effective mechanic. Its attack, Evil Ball, scaled with energy on both active Pokémon.
Right, Evil Ball. It hit for 20 damage, plus 20 more for every single energy attached to both Yveltal and the defending Pokémon.
Exactly, and we need to really unpack why that specific math is so profound. Yveltal EX didn't just hit a static number that you could plan around. It weaponized the opponent's only win condition.
By using their own energy against them.
Exactly. If you are listening to this and wondering how a simple addition mechanic becomes legendary, it's because it creates an inescapable behavioral trap. To beat me, you must attach energy to your Pokémon so you can attack.
Yep.
But the act of attaching energy is exactly what gives Yveltal the math to destroy you. If you, as my opponent, attach an energy to your active Pokémon to prepare to fight back, you have just increased Yveltal's damage output against yourself.
It is a brutal catch-22.
It really is. You need energy to play the game, but playing the game guarantees your own destruction. Progression is punishment.
That's a great way to put it.
It meant Yveltal hit harder and harder as the match went on. It was inevitable. For years, tournament-winning decks were built around Yveltal EX because continuous, mathematically perfect scaling always outperforms the sudden, clunky burst of a Mega Charizard.
You didn't have to skip a turn.
You didn't. You just attached an energy, applied immediate pressure, and watched your opponent squirm as they realized their own setup was killing them.
Okay, I will agree that the scaling mechanic of Yveltal EX is a masterclass in card design. Weaponizing the opponent's energy attachment against them is incredibly elegant.
Thank you.
But elegance doesn't dictate a game's legacy. Terror does. And nothing terrified players more than seeing a Mega Evolution hit the board.
I really don't think they were that scared.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning as the defining legacy because it ignores the broader cultural and historical footprint of the game. Let's look at how this translated into the visual revolution and the collectible legacy of this era.
So we're pivoting to the art now.
It matters. If Yveltal EX was so mechanically superior, why is it that the incredible modern collector value, the absolute holy grail of the X and Y era, is heavily skewed toward Mega Charizard EX?
Oh, come on.
Doesn't the fact that collectors today covet the Mega Evolution so fiercely prove that the mechanic left a deeper historical footprint? Mega Evolutions brought miniature works of art to the community.
The art was great, yes.
They elevated the standard of what a Pokémon card could look like, breaking the physical borders of the art box with Japanese text roaring across the card, showcasing dynamic, vibrant power. It wasn't just a card, it was an event.
Conflating secondary market collector value with strategic legacy is a dangerous game.
Is it?
Yes. Mega Charizard EX is a highly sought-after collectible today, obviously. But Charizard cards always are. That is a universal constant in the Pokémon TCG, entirely independent of the X and Y era's specific mechanics.
It definitely got a huge bump from the Mega design, though.
If you put Charizard on a piece of cardboard, it will be coveted. But if we are talking about the visual revolution and the collectible legacy specific to Kalos, you have to look at the broader scope of what was happening. The standard EX and full art cards of this era are what truly elevated the medium.
Like the textured cards?
Exactly. We saw detailed, textured full arts of Kalos favorites: Greninja, Talonflame, Sylveon, Aegislash, Pikachu. These cards felt alive. And more importantly, you have to look at the Kalos legendaries themselves.
You're talking about the thematic integration of Xerneas, Yveltal, and Zygarde.
Precisely. Xerneas represented life, Yveltal represented destruction, and Zygarde represented balance. Their standard EX cards reflected these themes beautifully, not just in their artwork, but in their actual mechanics.
How so?
Think about how this actually felt to a player. When you played Xerneas' Geomancy attack, you were literally flooding your board with resources. You were pulling energy directly from your deck to revive a stagnant, empty bench.
Playing the role of the life giver.
Exactly. It wasn't just flavor text. The mechanics forced you to act out the lore of the universe, and Yveltal's scaling attack, as we just discussed, destroyed whatever was foolish enough to build up power in front of it.
It is a great thematic tie-in.
This holistic thematic design, where the art, The lore of the 3D video games and the mechanics perfectly mirrored one another. That is what collectors and players truly covet. It wasn't just the loud, border-breaking, in-your-face art of Mega Evolution.
I mean, I love the loud art.
Sure, but it was the sophisticated integration of theme and gameplay that standard EX cards perfected. The secret rares and full arts of standard EX cards proved that a card didn't need to skip a turn or have a massive mega banner to be a masterpiece.
Look, the synergy between lore and gameplay with Xerneas and Yveltal is undeniably brilliant. Flooding your board with energy does make you feel like the avatar of life.
It really does.
But I would argue that Mega Evolution, with its visually explosive art style, was the catalyst that forced the Pokémon TCG to elevate its aesthetic standards across the board. Without the pure shock value of the Mega mechanic, perhaps we don't get that push toward the stunning full arts you were praising.
That's speculative, but interesting.
It's like looking at the X and Y era as a massive, high-stakes laboratory. You have these two incredibly vital experiments running parallel to each other. On one side of the lab, you have Mega Evolution, this high-risk, momentum-sacrificing mechanic that forced players into a totally new strategic paradigm. It asked a very specific, psychological question. How much of your momentum are you willing to bleed today for a guaranteed, overwhelming victory tomorrow?
And on the other side of the lab, you have the standard EX cards, the steady, scaling power, the experiment that asked, how perfectly can we balance power and vulnerability within the two-prize card economy?
Exactly.
I think we can both agree that this era was a period of unprecedented growth. It took the classic elements of the game, injected them with completely new, volatile variables, and successfully bridged the gap to the modern, hyper-competitive Pokémon TCG we have today.
Absolutely. The global competitive community expanded dramatically during this time, precisely because there were so many different ways to engage with these mechanics.
Yeah. It was a golden age for deck building.
Whether it was the intellectual puzzle of timing a Mega Evolution perfectly to catch your opponent off guard, or the cold, calculating math of an Yveltal EX mirror match, where every single energy attachment could mean death, the game just demanded more from its players than ever before.
It did. And while I will always maintain that the scaling power, the constant pressure, and the elegance of EX cards anchored the era's competitive scene, I do have to acknowledge something.
Oh.
The sheer, terrifying presence of Mega Evolutions forced players to build better, faster, and more resilient decks. The looming threat of the super weapon made the conventional weapons sharper.
That's a great concession.
Well, it's true. If Mega Charizard was going to delete your EX on turn 3, your EX deck had to be efficient enough to win the game on turn 2.
The looming threat of the super weapon made the conventional weapons sharper. That is the perfect way to frame the tension of the era.
Thank you.
The X and Y expansion was that sudden dimensional shift. It took a game we all thought we fully understood and shattered the 2D glass, forcing us to account for threats on a whole new axis.
It was a wildly fun time to play.
It really was. We may not agree on which mechanic ultimately ruled the era, but there is so much more to explore in these sets. For everyone listening, the next time you are flipping through your Kalos collections, looking at those vibrant, textured artworks, you will have to decide for yourself.
Definitely.
Do you value the raw, terrifying, turn-ending power of a Mega Evolution, or the calculated, inevitable destruction of a scaling EX? Think about what it means to truly control the momentum of a game.